Hey everyone, it's Peter Kerr from Daydream Nation, and I've got my buddy from America, John the Music Nut. How are you?
Doing great, Peter. How are you?
Christmas is coming. Christmas is coming. Yeah,
Nice.
look, it's going well. It's summertime in Australia, wearing the shorts, the shirt, and yeah, maybe go for a swim later if the weather holds up. How's things?
It's cold. I
It's
got the
cold.
hoodie on. Yeah, so today it wasn't too bad. Today it was about 50, but it rained all day. But after this rain, it's going to get down into the 30s again and lows of 20s in the night.
Yeah,
No
yeah.
snow the next few days.
Yeah, understand. All right, today's show, we are going to talk about artists that no longer rock. So their early material was very rock orientated. It was out there, but their later material or latest album is clearly something completely different and no longer rock. So, John, why don't you hit me with your number one pick or your first pick?
Thank you, Peter. So this is a band that I've been saying for years used to be a juggernaut. They were a fantastic band in their early years. And that band, and I'm going to show you their first album right now, is Chicago. Chicago, in their prime, I think were one of the best bands in the world. You had three great singers in Terry Kath, Robert Lamb, and Peter Cetera. They were a musical juggernaut. Robert Lamb and Terry Kath in particular were wonderful writers. They had harmonies. They were a rock band with horns, and they used that horn section to the hilt early on. The first two albums, which are probably the most easily to get these days, were fantastic albums. They had hit singles, but there was also a lot of diversity on them, a lot of creativity. Terry Kath sang like Ray Charles, and he was a fantastic guitar player. Just to give you an idea about Terry Kath, Jimi Hendrix once said about Chicago, he said, "You guys got this great band, you got this great horn section, you have a guitar player who plays better than me." Terry Kath was a beast.
That's fine praise indeed, isn't it?
Isn't it? Peter Cetera was a fantastic bass player early on. You wouldn't know that now, but I'm going to get to that. But he had this high tenor voice. He was a wonderful singer. Robert Lamb was a very good singer, but a better composer. They had so many great songs. They had hits for about a 6-year stretch. And as time went on, they got a little more pop, and they started adding some jazz fusion to their sound on Chicago 7. They made 4 double albums out of their first 7, and they were all really good. They were never boring, always interesting. Amidst the hit singles, you had a lot of great deep tracks. And then Chicago 10 comes along. Now, Chicago 9 was the greatest hits album, one of the finest single disc greatest hits albums you'll ever find. And Peter Cetera had a huge hit. I think won the Song of the Year in 1976 for "If You Leave Me Now." And they had pop hits in the past, but there was some grit to them. "If You Leave Me Now" was schmaltz. And then after that, between them going into that direction and Terry Kath dying, they were never the same band. Although commercially, they would find their greatest success with Chicago 17. Their album covers aren't very imaginative. It's the logo over a different background each time. By this point, and on the previous album, Chicago 16, they hooked up with David Foster. And David Foster has this knack for writing great middle-of-the-road songs. They all kind of have a samey sound to them, regardless of who he was working for. He had his greatest success with Chicago. At this point, the horns were in the background. They put Peter Cetera out front. At this point, 1984, MTV's the big thing. And Peter Cetera and is a handsome man. He was the best looking guy in that band. They put the focus on Cetera. When they did the videos, the focus was on Cetera. With the singles, it was the Cetera songs that he sung. And they did find some great success. They had 2 number 1 hits with Hard Habit to Break and You're the Inspiration, which, back in my headbanging days, I didn't like those songs, but I hear them now. And I went to see them live 5 years ago, and I realized they were great songs when I started singing all the choruses. Yep. I mean, they stuck with me. But amidst this, they wrote a lot of unmemorable songs in that same style. And they were never the same. They were no longer a rock band anymore. They redid their great hit from the early 70s, 25 or 6 to 4 on Chicago 18. And it was terrible. And I don't say that about a song often. But they had a bunch of hit singles, but they came and gone. They didn't age well. Will You Still Love Me? Chasing the Wind. You're Not Alone. What Kind of Man Would I Be? They were working a lot more with professional songwriters. The rock part was gone at this point. You want a guitar solo in there, they're going to bring somebody in, like a Steve Lukather. But fantastic band early on. Pop Schmaltz later. Chicago. But I'll tell you what, those early albums, will love them to death for the rest of my life. They're fantastic.
Yeah. Thanks, John. I guess it's hard to say I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is. And there was another great song, but it was schmaltzy.
Off that Summer Lovers movie. Look, all the hits in Australia are the schmaltz, the pop songs. And when people say, hey, do you like Chicago? I say no, because I just think of the later pop schmaltz. I have not done a deep dive and explored the early part of the catalogue. So from a record sale commercial point of view in Australia, it's the later Chicago that we are intimately familiar, because they were a hit machine. They put out lots of those songs and still played on the easy listening greatest hits, classic rock or easy listening rock stations today. Great case study. Great case study, that.
Just to let you know, like in the 70s, Color My World was a beautiful ballad in the 70s, but they also had the great rock songs like 25 or 6 to 4 and Beginnings and Does Anybody Really Know What Time It Is, Saturday in the Park. Those songs are the ones that stood the test of time. When you go to see them live, that's the majority of their set. They'll play those 4 number 1 hits they had in the 80s, one of them being Hard to Say I'm Sorry.
Yeah.
They'll still play them, but they don't go deep into them.
No deep catalogue. Yeah, no, and that's another thing I want to say about this show. This show is about on record, because some of the artists we may talk about wheel out their rock hits and play it in a live setting, but on vinyl, on tape, the rock has been sucked out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it looks like somebody operated on this band and sucked the rock out of them. 1976, maybe. So that probably is the where they jumped.
Yes, I would say that 76. He actually tried to go a little disco too on Hot Streets, or not Hot Streets, Chicago 13. And they tried different things, but the rock was gone by once. If You Leave Me Now, they weren't rock anymore.
Yeah. No, that's a good pick. Radio. Well, this band was the whole catalyst for this show when I was speaking with you, John, and it got me really fired up. So there's a band that formed in 2002 in Sheffield, UK, and I would describe their music as garage, indie rock, a lot of energy, wrote and produced an absolute humdinger of a classic album. And I'm talking about the Arctic Monkeys and their Firecracker debut. Whatever people say I am, that's what I'm not. It was the fastest selling debut in UK record history. Went to number 1. In Australia, went to number 1. Even in the US, they may have been a bit slower to catch on. It went to number 24, but it attained gold status, and subsequent albums reached platinum status. This album was just a firecracker of energy. I saw them live, and to me, it reminded me of early Beatles. You had this wonderful singer, songwriter, Alex Turner, sounds like Lennon. He's got beautiful observational lyrics, wordplay, sense of melody, great songs. I Bet You Look Good on the Dance Floor, Dancing Shoes, Riot Van, fantastic album. And this was when rock was really back in the early 2000s, where you had the Vines, you had the Hives, maybe a bit of Jet, a lot of those bands. And, you know, it was on Rolling Stone magazine. This came out a little bit after the garage rock, but it certainly made an impact, this album. Then, so I bought subsequent albums and they were still quite rocky. And for whatever reason, when you're exploring different music, I didn't buy any of their albums. And it wasn't because I fell out of love with Arctic Monkeys. It's simply I was just going down other rabbit holes. I read a review about an album they put out in 2018 called Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino. And the review said that they were exploring different music sonics. They were going into ambient music, lounge music. I was a little concerned. I always was going to buy the album, but never got around to that. Do you have the same problem, John? That you know, there's sort of like, I've got to buy this album, but other sort of albums take your attention and you never got around to it. I never bought it. But this came out, and this is the latest Arctic Monkeys album. It's called The Car, and I bought it. And I played it in the car. Yeah, so this is the album called The Car. I played it in my car on the way to work.
Mm-hmm.
I almost had a car accident.
No.
It was a complete change in music. It sounded like Burt Bacharach.
Oh, geez.
So you've gone from the start of this band where they were a rowdy, rambunctious garage rock band, lyrics about, you know, pulling chicks in nightclubs, and it was basically about youth culture. It was just it was like almost like Nevermind the Bollocks. It's just a classic album full of youthful, punkish energy. And then putting this album on, it's yacht rock and it's lounge. Wow. And it's sort of like Alex Turner's told his band members, okay, lads, guitars down. And he's playing piano arrangements with strings. It's just from one sort of type of music to the other. It's been critically acclaimed. A lot of the, sort of the elite critics just think this is just wonderful. But to me, it's dull. And Alex Turner, he writes wonderful lyrics, but it's really, he can be very wordy. And he's writing these really wordy lyrics over these string arrangements, and it just doesn't match. He's got a beautiful voice. He sings, he projects Scott Walker. It's very Baroque. It's very piano. It's very lounge yacht rock. There's even a little bit of the disco. Like there's one song called Hello You. And it sounds like it could have been written or recorded on the Casablanca label of the 70s. Wow. Could have been released and played in Studio 54. All the songs are kind of samey. I've never been so disappointed. And look, I get bands evolve. The Beatles. First album, Sgt. Pepper's. There's evolution. But to me, this is just not a great album. It's just really samey. And I understand maybe I've missed a few albums. If I listened to Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino, which was the album before, this transition to this album would have been a lot better for me, but it was just a complete shock. And I was actually on the Contrarians and waxing lyrical about the Arctic Monkeys debut as being my favorite album of the 2000s. And to hear this album was just a major letdown. I honestly was going to wind the car window down and just go. I listened to it a few more times. I don't get it. I'm sorry. It's really funny. If you look at the cover, and I'll put it on, you see there's this car on the top of this car park, and he's done wheelies. To me, that's probably the band. They're going in circles and they don't know what the hell they're doing. Done. So this is where this whole premise of this show, I'm sorry, I might get some negative feedback, but I just don't get it. And I'm really disappointed. The car, Arctic Monkeys, maybe it should have been an Alex Turner solo album. I'm not sure. But even, don't get me wrong, I love 60s Baroque pop. I love Burt Bacharach. But even on that level, it's a very dull album and it's a major disappointed. So case study one, Arctic Monkeys, from garage rock to lounge music.
That first album that we talked about this off air. At that time, I wasn't listening to a lot of rock music, but so I kind of missed them. I picked that album out, and I agree with you. What a fantastic album.
Brilliant.
That debut is. It is brilliant. I mean, the first, I still have a 5 CD player. I just throw them in, and then, that album started out, and I'm like, oh, it just grabbed me by the throat right there, and it didn't let up. It's a fantastic album.
And live, they're just absolutely dynamic. I don't know if you've heard this, but you've got to listen to just 1 or 2 songs off this album, and maybe offline. Tell me what you think.
Yeah, I certainly will. No doubt.
Alrighty, matey. What's your number 2? I'm a little bit drained after that one. That really fired me up, I tell you.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm going to go chronological with mine, just to say, I'm not saying one's, although Chicago was a big disappointment to me. Now, my second one, okay, this band is from Illinois, and they're still out there touring. And they were one of those bands who built up a following over many years before they hit pay dirt. And the name of that band is REO Speedwagon. Now, this album here is live. You get what you play for. This is their live album from 77. To me, this is one of the unsung great live albums, double live albums from the 70s. You always hear the same ones mentioned. You don't hear a lot of love about this one. Those who have this album love it. And I love this album. After this album, they put an album out called You Can't Tune a Piano, but You Can Tune a Fish. And that had the hit singles. Well, they weren't hit singles as far as chart-wise. They only charted in the 50s. But the songs were Time for Me to Fly and Roll with the Changes. Those songs are classic rock standards. They weren't their biggest hits, as I mentioned, but that just kept the momentum going. High Infidelity came out in 1980, and 9 Lives was before that. That was a good album as well. High Infidelity, they did go more pop direction, but it still rocked. Don't Let It Go was the opener. That was a kick-ass song. Take It on the Run and Keep on Loving You were the big hits. Keep on Loving You was one of the great power ballads ever. And it's what a power ballad should be. It's a ballad, but it rocks. Wonderful guitar solo in there from Gary Richoff. There's another underrated guitar player. He's no longer with us. And as time went on, after they had that success, they went more and more pop. And by 1984, they did Wheels Are Turning. And the big hit on that, another number 1 song, was Can't Fight This Feeling. And by that point, it was schmaltz. It's a good song, but it was schmaltz. And then 1987 comes along, and they do an album called Life as We Know It. Life as We Know It. And it got worse. They put a song out called That Ain't Love, and it sounded like the opening song to a family sitcom. And then and then they did a single. The second single, I may get these mixed up, was In My Dreams. And it made In My Dreams was so pop. I mean, let's put it this way. As my friend who just passed on, Mr. Charlie Dugan, would say, it was pap. It was terrible. And it made a song like Keep On Loving You sound like Slayer. You know, it made it sound so much heavier than it was. Then they put out a greatest hits album called The Hits. And, well, we got to put a single on there. So we put in an even more schmaltzy ballad called Here With Me. And I think it ruined their career because they didn't really sell any more albums after that. They put out a few more and they bombed. And now they're basically, you know, still a great live act. And when you go see them live, they're not doing all those songs that I said that were bad, that I don't care for. They still do Keep On Loving You. They still do Can't Fight This Feeling.
Riding the Storm Out, they play that, don't they?
Riding the Storm Out, they still play. Riding the Storm Out's fantastic. I mean, there's so many great songs on this live album. Riding the Storm Out, Keep Pushing, Music Man, Like You Do. And a lot of these got played heavy on classic rock radio back in the day.
Yeah.
It's like they got that touch of success, and it was like a slow burn, and then they just got bad.
Yeah,
on record.
That's a good case study. People forget that REO were very much like a Deep Purple band, very much in that wheelhouse, hard rock. I've got a soft spot for High Infidelity for all its flaws. That was a huge hit in Australia. That album went to number one. They had multiple hit singles. All the hit singles that you've spoken about were also translated to these parts and were huge hit singles in Australia as well. But I've got a soft spot. I even picked up the double remaster with the sort of the demos. I like it. It's the only REO I own, but I'm fully aware of their back catalogue and how they sort of rocked out. I think Kevin Cronin, he's he's the most American sounding vocalist of any American sounding vocalist, just his vowels and the way he sings.
Yeah.
And when he sings a love song, he can be very earnest.
Yes.
And it does put a tendency into the schmaltz.
Yes.
So I can fully sort of understand. I haven't explored that later catalogue, but I think you've certainly put a red flag maybe to avoid that. But they're one band, their early stuff. They rocked hard, and they were a bit of a draw card around America. They could certainly draw a crowd, but that High Infidelity was their big breakthrough hit, because they went from a middle tier selling album band into the big league with that one. Even though they were a big draw card concert wise, they didn't quite convert that into album sales, but that album in 1980 was a breakthrough worldwide. So great case study.
Thank you.
Another cautionary tale, not as savage as Arctic Monkeys, though. I'm still trying to get over that. Anyway, get over it, Peter. All right.
You can do it.
I can do it. Next one. This band came out of California with a very innovative sound. 1984, they had a self-titled debut. They melded hip-hop to funk with a little bit of metal, bit of alternative. And I'm talking a band called the Red Hot Chili Peppers. So this is another band that I was very much into the day. Blood, Sugar, Sex Magic, all their early albums. They're self-titled, Freaky Styley, loved it. I had a long period that I fell out of love with the Red Hot Chili Peppers, so I didn't purchase Californication, but I'm fully aware of it. A lot of their songs off that album just seem very AM, bland, beige, not a lot of edge.
Yes.
I went to my local record store and I noticed that they had a new album out, and it was called The Return of the Dream Canteen, which came out this year. I think it was about 6 weeks ago or 2 months ago. 17 tracks, produced by Rick Rubin. And I go, okay, all right, well, maybe they're going back to the old style. I play it. It starts off very promising with the first song, which is Tip of My Tongue. Listen to it. It's got a real nice groove to it. It's kind of like a Slick, Cool and the Gang, but, you know, Flea's bass playing is sublime. The rhythm section's all firing. And you've got Anthony on vocals, just, you know, singing, crooning nicely. Peace and Love, second song. That's a little bit more slower tempo. It's got a nice melody. But the rest of the album, it goes downhill quick. To me, it sounds like it's backing tracks for George Benson, and not in a good way. There's no edge. There's a few songs here and there where you think your interest is picked up a little bit, and it's a little bit rock, but it hasn't got that grit, that energy, that rock and roll of that self-titled album, or a Freaky Styley, or even their more popular multi-platinum selling albums. This album is definitely beige. It's all mid-tempo, and frankly, it becomes really, really boring. So there's the album. It's all sort of... Apparently, this was part 2 of 2 albums that they laid down, 33 tracks, and this is the second part of it. And yeah, it's a bit of an endurance test to get through. So I have put this in today's show because when you compare, because their sound melding that metal with funk was sort of a precursor to new metal. Rightly or wrongly, it's not one of my favorite genres, but they were the architects. Red Hot Chili Peppers, Faith No More, and they had a lot of grit and they had a lot of energy. But this, to me, sounds kind of loungy, kind of like they have forgotten how to rock, or they've lost that edge. So that's my example. 17 tracks, goes for 1 hour and 17 minutes, and that's another case study for too much on a CD. I know that CDs hold a lot of material. Bring it back to the, you know, keep it 10 and put your 10 best tracks and keep it punchy, but this just meanders. So that's my case study number 2, Red Hot Chili Peppers.
That's an excellent choice, Peter. Yeah, they've been safe for a long time now.
No edge.
There's no edge. I mean, Mother's Milk from '89, that was a wonderful album as well. Even One Hot Minute. I mean, some of it was kind of safe, but there were some great songs on there as well. I think when Californication gave them that second career, so to speak. I mean, they were up, they were down, and they went back up. I mean, they stayed safe. I mean, they'll tease you for about 30 seconds with this little funk workout, and then it gets into this mid-tempo stuff that just isn't interesting.
Mate, it's almost Maroon 5 territory, I hate to say. And dare I say that on this channel. But I guess sales work in the sense that if you put something out and the masses purchase it, then when you're on a good thing, stick to it, do it again and again. But I'm just, as a personal, I'm a fan. I love their early stuff, and they have completely polished the grit and the grime and the energy. They were kind of semi-dangerous.
They were.
But there's just no danger on this album. It's safe. Musically, as I said, first 2 tracks are nice, but to me, it's like, it's a bit rudimentary. Alrighty, what's your next pick, mate?
Thank you, Peter. So we're going to go with, okay, well, they lived 2 hours from me, and they became huge and still a huge band. I came of age right when this band was at their apex in popularity, and that band is Bon Jovi, and this is their album, New Jersey. In my opinion, I think New Jersey's the sweet spot. Slippery When Wet was the bigger seller, but I don't think it's as consistently good as New Jersey. New Jersey had more singles. They were going, but John Bon Jovi was trying to sound a little like Springsteen, but at this point, I think the songs really worked. I thought the singles were fantastic back in these days when they tried to get more Springsteen, like on Blood, which is my favorite Bon Jovi song, period. I thought they knocked it out of the park. And they had 5 hit singles from this album, 2 number ones in the States, 2 number ones in Bad Medicine, which was a wonderful track, and I'll Be There For You, which was a wonderful ballad. They took a little time off. They did a album called Keep the Faith, which was more mature album, still pretty good, still rocked. And 1994, they put out a greatest hits album called Crossroad. And the single was the schmaltzy Always. And here comes Bon Jovi becoming a middle of the road adult contemporary band at this point, in my opinion. And from this point on, they've done some good stuff. I liked It's My Life from Crush. That was a very good single. I even liked You Can't Go Home, which it's kind of safe, but it's a good song. And on this album called Lost Highway, they decide to go in a country direction and a new country direction. And once again, to quote my friend Charlie, this is pap. I mean, it's not good. It's just so safe. They lost all edges, you would say, Peter. They don't sound like the same band. They sound like it could be any other band. I mean, and this went platinum in the States. It went to number 1, I believe. But it is just very safe music. I mean, they do a song with Big and Rich, who were country stars at that time, and it just comes off completely flat, in my opinion. It's just not good. I remember one time when I bought this, I thought, it's okay. I give it a 6 out of 10. Now I'd probably give it a 3. It's not aged well. Since then, they've tried to rock out again, but it's not the rock that they used to do. It's more like more modern U2. I mean, and that more modern U2, I used to dislike, but then I did a show on Ryan Gavalier's channel about U2, and I got to appreciate those later albums a little more, even though I don't like it as much as the early stuff. But this isn't good. This is not good. Later albums they did, Burning Bridges, The Circle, 2020, not so hot. I mean, they lost the plot, in my opinion. I respect the fact that bands take chances like you do, Peter. And he's taking more chances lyrically. He's writing a lot more. John's writing a lot more about what's out there now, how things are. I respect that. But musically, the hooks are gone. The songs aren't memorable. Bon Jovi used to be able to recognize. No, you can't recognize him. You're like, it just sounds like anything else. I think. Anyway, Bon Jovi's my third one. Bandit used to rock and no longer does.
Well, John, you know how we spoke pre-show where we might have crossover picks. I picked Bon Jovi.
Did you?
Yes. So that was my case study. Look, I'm not the biggest Bon Jovi fan, but I have a soft spot for the self-titled debut.
Yes.
It was a pop metal, had smarts, good songwriting, Runaway. It had that sort of keyboard stabs, the percussive drums, the chugga-chugga guitar. But I think Bon Jovi is actually embarrassed about those early couple of hair metal albums, and he spent the majority of his career getting away from it. Slippery When Wet, obviously he'll play that till the cows come in because that's what people want to hear. But I think those first 2 albums which arguably are his best, he's put that behind him. And I don't know if embarrassment's the word, but he just doesn't want to have anything to do with it. And progressively, they have become softer and blander, and the guitar sounds are cleaner. Richie Sambora leaving the band has certainly set the rot, because he had at least a little bit of a metallic edge, or had a little bit of a, more guitar focus in regards to the songwriting. But you compare it to Bon Jovi 2020, which I just had the unfortunate task for this show to listen, and that was an ordeal. It's pop. You've got country flirtations. You've got a song which reminded me of U2, Beautiful Day. Not Beautiful Day, but it's sort of like a U2 song called Beautiful Drug, I think. Let It Rain. That's like a power ballad, but it's all pappy and sap, and there's just simply no edge. And I think over time, he is wanting to get into this Bruce Springsteen territory, because I think he's always had aspirations. Bruce has been a big influence in his songwriting and writing about stories about the common folk and the trials and tribulations. And yeah, I tip my hat to what your observation in regards to his songwriting. But the music is moved into a completely different genre, and it's clearly it's not rock, it's more just middle of the road, I'm afraid.
Yes.
And those people that remember when Bon Jovi was supporting Rat and Motley Crue, that's a distant memory, a long distant memory. So compare the first album, which had a little bit of pop metal smarts about it, a little bit of edge, and compare it to Bon Jovi 2020, it's worlds apart. It's like a lifetime ago, and that's clearly one artist that just does not rock anymore. And I mean, the whole future of the band as an entity has got a bit of a question mark, because his vocals have clearly deteriorated, and there's been all sorts of footage of him live where it sounds like something has gone wrong. He has done some damage to his vocals. He cannot hit those notes anymore. And I've seen a lot of those heritage acts. Recently, I saw Guns N' Roses. Axl's got a similar problem. David Coverdale, I think through wear and tear, same thing. But out of all of them, Bon Jovi, his vocals, there's something really, really wrong. And he's a little bit younger than those chaps. Or maybe he's the same age as Axl. I don't know.
Him and Axl might be around 60 years old at this point.
Yeah, but there's something that's happened in the last 5-6 years, and it's been a very noticeable deterioration in his vocals. So as a live entity, I don't know, there may be a bit of a question mark. Anyway, that's a good case study. That's my pick as well, Bon Jovi.
Good. Excellent. Yeah, I think we really nailed it. I mean, just different things. And interesting you said that about him being live, because for several years he was the number one live draw in the States.
Huge draw in Australia too.
Yeah,
people keep on coming. People keep on coming back. And when people were going to other, when pop still rules. Let's face it, popular music, it is still the number one, and rock was kind of more of secondary. He was one of the top draw cards.
Same thing here. He plays stadiums, but he hasn't toured since before the pandemic, though, and I'm wondering if what his deterioration of his voice has something to do with it.
Yeah,
because everybody's trying to come back out, and he hasn't.
Yeah, well, there's something really, really wrong, and the viewers can just watch concert footage, and a lot of viewers say, oh, that's just concert footage and you're off the phone. There's just been a lot of people that have actually gone to the concerts and testimonial sort of responses and said there is something wrong. So I'm just wondering if the whole Bon Jovi there's a big question mark. Separate to that, there have been interviews with Richie Sambora, who said that he's open to rejoining the band. So there's been a kind of a warming up of relations between both of them. So that could be maybe hit another direction. But I've seen Bon Jovi a few times, and every time I've seen them, I just sort of think, rock out.
Yeah.
That's all. Just rock out. And I don't seem to get that.
Yeah, I only saw him in '87. I
saw that. It was like Beatlemania. You couldn't hear a lot of the vocals because there were just teenage girls screaming. I didn't see it in '87. I saw it in '86. But this is the right in the slippery when wet period, and it was like Beatlemania.
Did Cinderella open when you saw them?
I was in Australia. Cinderella's never played Australia. It was some support band. But yeah, they were huge. Australia's a big market. But yeah, that was the last time they probably rocked. Because it had that hair metal theatrical, had the lighting, it had the guitar solos, the keyboard solos, it had all the theatrics of a Motley Crue Rat concert. It was, but over time they moved into something completely different.
And it helped them. It helped their career go along while a lot of those other bands had stalled. But
they outlived them, didn't they?
Well. They did outlive them. Yeah. They outlived them, but I mean, when you go back and you listen to the later albums, I mean, there's not much to them. I mean,
well, you can still rock and be creative and commercially, but he chose a path to go into that Springsteen and sort of the sound. I think he was always aiming for that sort of country sound. I think he likes country music. I think he loves that Nashville sound, and that's something that they certainly wanted to go down that path. But me personally, I think that I prefer them when they rocked, and they haven't rocked for a long time.
Totally agreed.
All right,
excellent.
What's your next pick, mate?
All right, remember, so we were saying, I was talking about bands who were still huge. And the band I'm going to talk about is Coldplay. Coldplay, to this day, play stadiums in the United States. Their sweet spot is these albums I'm going to show you. Rush of Blood to the Head, X and Y, Viva La Vida, or Debt to All of His Friends. Now, they've received a lot of criticism. People have called them Radiohead light, like a U2 wannabe. I thought they had their own sound, and I think the first 4 albums, I think, are quite good. And there were a lot of great rock songs on these albums. They were an indie rock band. They did have their pop songs, but they had great rock songs like Whisper, like Politic, like God Put a Smile Upon Your Face, Violet Hill, Shiver. They were great rock songs. On the 4th album, which was Viva La Vida, or Debt to All of His Friends, this is a very good album. It's very experimental. This is their first album with Brian Eno producing. And they had a huge hit with the song Viva La Vida. Now, they had hits in the States, but they never had a #1 smash, and then it became a #1 smash all over the world. And then they did Milo Exilito, and they went full pop. I think they got the taste of that success, and then they went full pop, and they lost the fire. Yeah. I first heard first single Paradise on the radio, and they lost me. And I think they've gotten subsequently worse with every album that's gone on. Ghost Stories. They weren't even using they were using electronic drums at that point. And they became a full-blown pop band. And to, I guess, my chagrin, and maybe some other people out there as well, they became more popular than ever, and now they're playing stadiums. And I've wanted to see them live, but I look at their set list, and most of the set list is this newer, safe pop music. And I like pop music, but I liked Coldplay when they were more organic and they wrote those riffs that I think the song Talk, that riff in that song, I think was that riff was made for the stadiums. And instead, they just went completely pop. The grit's gone. It's just not good music anymore.
Yeah.
Everyday Life wasn't a good album. The newest album, I think might be even worse than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they lost me.
Well, that's a good pick, John. And when I guess bands drink from the goblet of pop and success, platinum success, there's no turning back.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what happened, I think. And I respect the fact that they went for the success and all that, but no, I mean, I listen to these newer albums, which I never bought, and I go back to Rush of Blood to the Head or X and Y. I'm like, oh wow, why? I think those albums were perfect, but I thought they were all very good.
Maybe creatively they'll get the fire in their belly to go back to an earlier sound, because it gets to a point, if you get the adulation and you get your songs played on the radio and you're still getting platinum success. One of the other things is you've got to be creatively intrigued, sort of challenged.
Yes.
And it might get to a point that they will revisit it, because pop success does not provide them the creative challenge that their earlier, more rock orientated alternative music did provide.
Exactly.
So that may be the thing that brings them back. And that goes into U2 territory. U2 is not one of my choices, by the way, but the latest word on the street from Bono is that he's going to make a rowdy, noisy guitar album with U2. So my ears are up. I'm all for it, because I love the early U2, and I think they have lost their way over a considerable period of time. They've still got adulation. They can still sell out a stadium, but it's got to a point. They've got everything. They've achieved everything they want. Now it's more of being creatively challenged and going into a sound and rocking out. And that's where a lot of these bands might come back full circle to where they started, and that's just rocking out.
And it's not like just making an album that sounded like what you did back in the day, like going to rock out, but also take the things that you learned in the meantime and add it to that.
You've had 30 years to build up an armory of sounds and knowledge and experience. But that certainly has got my interest. A rowdy guitar album, I'd like to see them, go back to that sort of sound. That would be really interesting.
Yeah, I look forward to that.
All righty. My next pick, or my last pick, is I know one of your favorite vocalists, and I covered this particular male vocalist in a previous show with you and Ryan Gavalier. So I've brought him back, and I'm talking about Rod Stewart.
Yes,
I love Rod. Rod's got he's got the golden, gritty pipes of rock. He's rock royalty. But let's face it, when you look at his early work, when he was singing for the Jeff Beck Group and albums like Truth, Ola, even his work with the Faces, his early solo material cannot be touched. I'm talking about Gasoline Alley. I'm talking about Every Picture Tells a Story. And then you go 40 years and you look at the Great American Songbook and the Soul Book.
Yeah.
It's not good. I'm not a big fan in any shape or form of that. He's gone into Michael Bolton territory. There is a huge market. and it's the schmaltz market. Michael Bolton, Bublé. What's his name? Michael. Is it Michael? They're all Michaels.
Yeah.
And those sort of albums do killer business around Christmas time. So go to your local record store and you'll see all the crooners put out their periodic Christmas albums, and it's strictly in that category. It's the grey, it's the blue rinse set where a lot of the older ladies and older folk will dine on that music and just love it. I might get some hate mail on this, but to me, it's just creatively dead. And I've heard some of the songs and his versions of it. He doesn't really bring much to the party, and I would rather hear rock out. And look, there's probably a point of conjecture that he hasn't rocked out for quite some time, because maybe it's been debatable on Atlantic Crossing side 2. He went down into a different pop direction, and those early albums where there was grit, fire in the belly of Gasoline Alley, Every Picture Tells a Story, was sort of maybe left in the past. But it is a clear indication with Rod, with the Great American Songbook. He is maybe vocally, he cannot challenge himself with rock. And there has been some rumours that he was offered a Faces reunion and he knocked it back because he can't do rock anymore. He hasn't got the vocal chops to be able to do it. And Mick Hucknall of Simply Red, you heard me, I'll say it again, Mick Hucknall of Simply Red was the singer and did a fine job, I might add. So, Rod Stewart, what's your thoughts on that?
I agree with you wholeheartedly. How many of those songbook albums he make? Like 5? Something
Big sellers.
Yeah, no. Yeah,
And in some cases, they've outsold a lot of his 90s output, you know?
Yeah. And everyone got progressively worse. I mean, sales-wise and just more of the same. But, people go out and buy it. Yeah, I'm with you. I did not dig into that one.
Yeah.
No, that's not my thing. I mean, he kind of he tried to go, I don't remember the name of the album, but in the 90s, he tried to go rock one more time. And I remember he did a cover of Oasis, Cigarettes and Alcohol.
Yes.
When we were the good boys, or when we were the young boys, or something like that might be. There he tried to do it, and he was trying to do I think he might have did his own version of Ooh La La from the Faces, but it wasn't quite as rocking. But I think he tried there. I remember hearing Cigarettes and Alcohol and Rocks. Get Your Rocks Off. That I forget. Yeah. It's a band from UK, but he tried, and then he did the Unplugged. Oh, he did Unplugged in Cedar around that time, and then he went
Primal Scream, Get Your Rocks Off.
Primal Scream, thank you. And then he did and then he went into the Great American Songbook thing, and no, it's
a safe territory.
Very safe.
So, yeah, look, that's a case study. So that's the Vegas years, really, and he's made a lot of coin out of it, but artistically, it's doesn't really challenge me, and I wouldn't be getting it. And that's clearly one artist that doesn't rock. But you've seen him live. I haven't seen him live, you and Ryan, and you told me very passionately that he still has the rock element in his live, but it's just on tape. It's not there.
Yeah.
And not clearly with the Great American Songbook.
Yeah.
All right, that's great. Have you got any other honourable mentions that you want to quickly bring to the table?
Sure. Okay. This is Arcade Fire. This is their debut album, Funeral. This is an album that a lot of people say is one of the best of the 2000s, and I wholeheartedly agree. I think the first 3 albums, they have this very distinct sound. They have 15 people in the band, and some of their songs rock, and there's a lot of melodrama, a lot of violins. And it all works. I mean, just it sounds like it could be overblown, but it all works. And I think this album, Funeral, Neon Bible, Suburbs won the Grammy for Album of the Year in 2011. Those albums were very good. And then after they win the Grammy for the Suburbs, they do a Hot Space like Queen, and they go into dance music on their next album, Reflector. And they have not recovered. They went even more dance on their next album. And Everything Now is the name of the album. And then their newest album, they're trying to get back to where they were. And I've been listening to the album, and it's like the magic is gone. I mean, there's still time. They're a young band. Those first 3 albums were wonderful, but then they went dance. I don't like it when a band goes into dance music. And to me, this is just exhibit A of this wonderful band that, and a lot of longtime fans feel the same way. There are All Music and all these other critics sites. They say these are good. Well, Everything Now, not so much, but they said Reflector was a wonderful album. I strongly disagree. And same thing. I'm hearing a lot of things that it's a great album. Not to my ears, at least not yet.
Yeah.
But that was one that jumped out at me. You mentioned, I'll say one more and then I'll stop. You mentioned Michael Bolton. You know, he started out as a hard rocker.
Yes, I do. Blackjack.
I
was even thinking about putting him in this little discussion paper, but I didn't really want to go into a deep dive of Michael Bolton.
I was in the same boat. Yeah. I was thinking about picking up the first album, and then the second album, Everybody's Crazy. I was thinking about picking them up, and I was like, nah, I'm pretty good.
I don't think I want to invest my time to go through the Michael Bolton, but I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was it's been rattling through my head in this recording with should I bring up Michael Bolton? Going back to Arcade Fire, I'm a little bit contrarian. I like Reflector. I've seen them a couple of times, and I saw them on that tour, and they were just going into what I call the Brian Eno U2 phase. It seems like there's a lot of bands that go through a change in direction and go into that experimentation. And I thought I wouldn't say it was their best album, but it was interesting. And I appreciate they were experimenting. Was it totally successful? No, but I don't think it was a disaster. And I didn't mind it. And that was the last time I saw them tour. I've picked up the last album, and I don't mind that. I think that they are trying to recapture the magic. But the big question mark over Arcade Fire is that there are a lot of allegations against their singer. I guess you could just read it on Google, and it's putting a bit of a question mark over the band's future. So, rightio. Well, there you go. Thank you for that. My honorable mention, very briefly, is Ghost.
Okay.
Ghosts were very heavy, and they had that really crunchy, evil sort of sound on their first album. But their subsequent later albums have definitely, I like them, but they're progressing in a very more, they're sort of exploring more of a pop land sort of soundscape. They even covered a Pet Shop Boys song. So that gives you some sort of an idea. Live, they're a bit of a blend of both. You can see that the band had metal pedigree, but a lot of it is smoothed out and it's very commercial. And I think that they just want to conquer the world. And a lot of these bands, they have to sort of sell their sound to sacrifice that heaviness if they want to get into a more popular sort of, more of a popular fan base. Look at Def Leppard. High and Dry is not what they're putting out now, because it won't sell to the masses. And people, what was their biggest hit? Hysteria, Pyromania, and that's what they're mining. It is what it is. So that's my case study. I think Ghost, you just check out their first couple of albums. They were very definitely heavy, and you could see that metal pedigree, but their later albums definitely going for a little bit more of a pop pedigree, even ABBA melodies.
Definitely.
So there you go.
Excellent choice.
Thanks, John. As always, you've delivered
Peter.
the goods. We've come up with some really good examples. And again, we've had a crossover. But that's fine. That's fine. Folks, you tell us what you think are some examples of artists that just don't rock anymore. You may agree, may disagree. Put your comments. Please like and subscribe. And I can assure you, John and I will be doing a show, very soon. Catch you later. Bye.
Thanks. Cheers.